My boyfriend told me we needed a break because his ex was joining the trip and I should just accept it. So I did. And when he came back, everything he thought he controlled was already gone. My name is Natalie Carter. I'm 31 years old. I work as a structural engineer in San Diego. My life runs on structure, deadlines, load calculations, precision. In my field, mistakes don't just cost money, they collapse things. So I've trained myself not to react emotionally when something doesn't make sense. I analyze it, I break it down, and then I decide what to do next. My boyfriend's name is Ethan Blake. He's 29. He works in brand marketing for a wellness startup. Mostly remote, flexible schedule, a lot of networking events, weekend launches, social circles that blurred into his work life. We'd been together just over 3 years, living together for 2, engaged for 7 months. On paper, everything was stable. We split the mortgage, shared expenses through a joint account, planned a wedding for early fall. Nothing dramatic, nothing chaotic, just predictable. Until the trip. Ethan had a college friend group that did one big trip every spring. This year, it was Cabo. We booked it in January. Flights confirmed. Resort suite paid. I cleared time off with my firm weeks in advance. I even turned down a consulting project because the dates overlapped. Everything was set until 2 weeks before the trip. He came home late that night. Not drunk, not distracted. Focused. Too focused. He skipped the usual routine. No small talk, no asking about my day. Just stood in the kitchen, keys still in his hand, and said, "We need to talk." I remember setting my glass down before answering. "Okay." He exhaled once, controlled. "My ex, Claire, she's going to Cabo." I didn't react immediately, just asked how. One of the girls reconnected with her. It would have been awkward not to include her. He said it casually, like he was explaining a change in dinner reservations. I nodded slowly. "And when did you find out?" He hesitated. "A few days ago." That was the first shift, not the ex, the delay. "I'm not comfortable with that," I said. Calm, direct. He rolled his eyes slightly, not dramatically, just enough to register. "Natalie, we're adults. You need to trust me." I didn't argue that. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. "Are you expecting me to go on a week-long trip where your ex is part of the group and pretend that's normal?" He didn't answer immediately. And then he said something that changed everything. "If you're going to be tense about it, maybe we should just take a break while I'm there." A break, timed perfectly with the week in Cabo, with his ex. I looked at him for a long second. "Are you asking for a break because Claire is going? Or is Claire going because you wanted a break?" His expression flattened. "You're being insecure." No hesitation, no reflection, just dismissal. Then he picked up his laptop, walked into the second bedroom, and closed the door. I didn't follow him, didn't knock, didn't argue through the wall. I just sat there and thought. Because in my world, when something doesn't align, you don't react. You assess. The next morning, I woke up at 5 o'clock, like always. He was still asleep in the guest room. I made coffee, reviewed structural drawings for a retaining wall project, and replayed the conversation. A break. Not reassurance. Not compromise. A break. Specifically timed for a trip where his ex would be present. When he came into the kitchen around 8, he acted like nothing had happened. "Can you grab the dry cleaning after work?" he asked. Like we hadn't just redefined our entire relationship. I looked at him. "We need clarity first." He sighed immediately. "I don't want drama before work." "I'm not creating drama," I said evenly. "I'm asking for terms." He frowned. "Terms?" "Yes. What does this break mean?" I kept my voice calm. "Are we still engaged during it? Are we exclusive? Are we telling people? Is this public or private?" He looked annoyed, like I was making something simple complicated. "It's just space, Natalie. No labels, no pressure. We reconnect when I get back." Refreshed. That word stayed with me. Refreshed from what? I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I asked, "Do you plan to act single on this trip?" His jaw tightened. "You're twisting my words." "No," I said quietly. "I'm defining them." He shook his head. "I deserve to enjoy a vacation without being monitored." "I didn't suggest monitoring you," I replied. "I said I'm uncomfortable with the situation." Then I asked the question that mattered most. If Claire wasn't going, would you still want this break? Silence. Not long, but long enough. "That's not the point," he said finally. For me, that was the point. "I won't stay in a relationship that gets paused for someone else's ex," I said. Still calm. "If you want a break, we can take one, but it won't be temporary." He crossed his arms. "You're being extreme." "I'm being clear." He left shortly after that, door slamming hard enough to shake the frame. I went to work, reviewed site plans, kept my phone on silent. Around noon, he texted, I've thought about it. I still want the break. It'll be healthier. I read it once, then replied, okay, we're on a break starting now. He sent a thumbs up emoji. That was it. No discussion, no reassurance, no boundaries. Just a line. Clean, simple, final. What Ethan didn't realize yet was that I treat breaks the same way I treat contracts. Once terms change, everything gets reevaluated. The first thing I did wasn't emotional. It was logistical. I reviewed our joint account. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, everything was current. Cabo had already been paid through his card. I'd transferred my half weeks ago. Then I called the airline. I didn't cancel his ticket. I canceled mine. Quietly. Redirected the credit. No announcement. If we were on a break, there was no reason for me to be part of his vacation. After work, I stopped by a storage facility. Rented a small unit. Month to month. Not because I was leaving. Because I wanted options. And options reduce panic. That night, Ethan came home, lighter. Almost cheerful. Detached. Like we were co-workers sharing a space, not people planning a wedding. Are we still splitting groceries? He asked casually. Yes, I said. Until further notice. He nodded. Good. Then, like it was nothing. Claire's staying in the larger suite with the group, as if that detail should reassure me. I canceled my flight, I told him. He blinked. You're not coming? No. We're on a break. It wouldn't make sense. His expression shifted instantly. That's petty. It's consistent. This was supposed to be space, not a statement. He didn't argue, just went quiet. That tight silence. Like he realized I wasn't following the version of events he had already decided. Over the next few days, he packed. New clothes arrived. Outfits for dinners. Extra gym sessions. Preparation. Not for us. For something else. The night before his flight, he stood in the doorway. Are you really going to act like this the whole time? I'm not acting, I said. I'm adjusting. He shook his head. You're overthinking everything. Maybe, but I've never seen a stable engagement require a scheduled break. That just happens to align perfectly, with an ex re-entering the picture. He left at 6 a.m. I didn't drive him to the airport, and that's when things started to shift. Because even when you step back, information doesn't. It finds you. The first 2 days were quiet. Work, home, silence. No tension. No arguments. Just clarity. Until the messages started. The first message came on the second night. It was from Daniel, one of the husbands in Ethan's friend group. We weren't close. Just familiar enough to exchange polite conversation over dinners. His text was simple. Hey, just checking in, you good? I stared at it for a moment. There's a difference between casual concern and informed concern. This felt like the second. I'm good, I replied. Hope you're all enjoying Cabo. 3 dots. Then. It's been eventful already. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. Because when people choose vague words, it usually means the details aren't subtle. An hour later, I got an Instagram message request. Private account. No posts. Profile picture, a sunset. Bio, San Diego. Normally I ignore those. This time, I didn't. The message read, you deserve to know what's being said about you. I almost smiled. Dramatic. But effective. What's being said? I asked. The reply came immediately. That you and Ethan are basically done. That the break is mutual. That you're both seeing other people. I read that twice. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I wanted to feel something. Anger. Jealousy. Anything. But what I felt instead was clarity. Who's saying that? I asked. The account sent a screenshot. A group story from the resort bar. Ethan in the background. Laughing. Drink in hand. The caption. Fresh start energy. Underneath, a comment from someone in the group. Finally. Finally. I didn't zoom in. I didn't analyze body language. I didn't need more. Because this wasn't about what he was doing. It was about what he was allowing. I typed one response. Thank you. Then I closed the chat. Didn't ask who they were. Didn't ask for more. Because I already had enough. If the narrative in Cabo was that I was no longer part of his life, then my next steps needed to reflect that. Not emotionally. Publicly. That night I opened my laptop and drafted an email. Not to Ethan. To everyone. Family. Friends. Anyone who had received our save the date. I kept it short. Controlled. Factual. Due to a change in circumstances, Ethan and I are currently reassessing our engagement. Wedding plans are paused indefinitely. No blame. No details. Just alignment. I didn't send it. Not yet. Because timing matters. The next morning, I went to work. Reviewed load calculations. Answered emails. Maintained routine. At 10:12 a.m., Daniel texted again. You might want to check the tagged photos. I hadn't muted those. There were 3 new posts. Same rooftop bar, different angles, same pattern. In 2 of them, Ethan was sitting close to Claire. Not accidental, intentional. Their bodies angled toward each other, his arm resting behind her chair, not touching, but close enough to suggest familiarity. In one short clip, someone laughed and said, "Guess the break worked fast." No correction, no hesitation. Ethan liked the post. That detail mattered more than anything else, because silence can be explained, but endorsement is a choice. I closed the app, sat back in my chair, and let the silence settle. Still no anger, still no impulse to call, because there was nothing left to clarify. At lunch, I made a different kind of call. The condo management office. The mortgage was in both our names, but I was listed as the primary contact. I asked a simple question. What's the process if one owner wants to initiate a buyout? The woman on the line explained timelines, requirements, documentation. I wrote everything down, not because I was acting on it immediately, because I was preparing. That afternoon, Ethan finally texted me. "Hope you're good. Cabo's amazing." I looked at it, then typed, "Glad you're enjoying it." A minute later, "You seem distant." I stared at the screen. "Read it again." Then replied, "We're on a break. Distance is implied." No response after that. That evening, the anonymous account messaged again. This time, a video. Taken from across the bar. Slightly shaky. Zoomed in. Ethan and Claire. Dancing. Not group dancing. Not casual. Close. No space between them. No kiss. No dramatic moment. But the kind of proximity that doesn't leave room for interpretation. And more importantly, it wasn't hidden. It was public. Open. Observable. That's when I made the decision. Not emotionally. Logically. He had suggested the break. He had defined the ambiguity. He had allowed the narrative. So I aligned with it. I opened my email draft. Read it once. Made one small edit. And scheduled it. 9 a.m. Pacific time. Right in the middle of their 3rd day in Cabo. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up at 5 o'clock. Same routine. Coffee. Work. Silence. At exactly 9 a.m., the email sent. Within minutes, my phone started vibrating. Calls. Messages. Notifications stacking on top of each other. My sister called first. I let it ring. Then texted. "I'm okay, I'll explain later." Then Ethan. Call. Declined. Call again. Declined. Damn. Then a text. "What did you just send?" I replied with the exact email. No extra words. 3 seconds later. "Are you insane?" I stared at that. Not the insult. The tone. Not concern. Not confusion. Embarrassment. "No," I typed. "I'm aligning public information with current reality." Typing bubble. Gone. Back again. Gone. Then, "You're humiliating me." That word. Humiliating. Not "you hurt me." Not "we need to talk." Humiliating. "How?" I asked. "People here are already asking what's going on. You blindsided me." I leaned back slightly. "Read the message again." "You initiated the break," I replied, "and publicly presented yourself as available enough for people to comment finally." Pause. Longer this time. "Then, that's not what it means." I didn't respond, because at this point, meaning wasn't the issue. Consistency was. A few seconds later, my phone rang again. "This time," I answered. His voice came through tight, elevated, barely controlled. "Natalie, what are you doing?" "Clarifying," I said. "You're overreacting. Nothing happened." "I didn't say it did." "Then why would you send that email?" "Hi." "Because we're on a break," I said calmly, "and the engagement isn't stable." That doesn't mean it's over." "It means it's uncertain," I replied. "And people deserve to know that before making plans around it." Silence. Heavy. Then, "You're making me look bad." There it was. Clear. Unfiltered. I asked one question. "Did you tell people we were done?" He hesitated. "I said we were figuring things out." "But that aligns with what I sent." Silence again. Then his voice cracked slightly, but not with regret, with pressure. "Claire's confused now." I closed my eyes briefly. That was the first time he said her name, like her reaction mattered. "No. That's not my responsibility," I said. He exhaled sharply. "You're blowing this up." "No," I said quietly. "I'm matching it." Then he hung up. 10 minutes later, the anonymous account sent one more message. You might want to check the resort's live feed tonight. Rooftop events are streamed. I didn't respond. But I noted the time difference. Because if something was going to break, I wanted to see it clearly. Not through messages, not through filters.
Pause.
Directly. That night, I opened the stream and waited. For the moment, everything stopped being controlled. I opened the resort's public live stream 10 minutes before the rooftop event started. The condo was quiet. Kitchen lights off. Laptop open on the counter. Volume low. San Diego felt still. Cabo did not. The camera was fixed near the bar, angled toward a section of lounge seating and the DJ booth. People drifted in slowly. Groups formed. Drinks lifted. Laughter moved in waves. And then I saw Ethan. He was dressed differently than he had been the night before. Not casual. Intentional. Dark shirt. Rolled sleeves. The watch I bought him for his 30th birthday. He was standing near Claire, talking to one of the women from the group, smiling the kind of smile people wear when they think the night is still salvageable. For a moment, nothing happened. Just music. Movement. The ordinary illusion of a normal trip. Then his phone buzzed. Even from that distance, I saw it. The quick glance downward. The shift in his face. The pause. He opened something. Read it. And froze. It happened that fast. 1 second relaxed. The next rigid. Still, like his body had gone ahead of his mind and recognized the damage before he was ready to. 2 women stepped closer immediately. He turned the screen toward them. One of them covered her mouth. The other grabbed his forearm. Then Ethan looked up too fast, scanning, already disoriented, like the answer might be standing somewhere in the crowd. Claire noticed next. She walked over, said something I couldn't hear. He showed her the phone. She read it, and her entire expression changed. Not heartbreak, not concern, irritation, sharp and instant. I didn't need subtitles. Body language is its own language. She leaned back first. That told me more than any confession would have. Whatever story Ethan had told her, it wasn't the full one. He started talking quickly, one hand moving, explaining, defending. Claire crossed her arms. One of the women tried to interrupt. He ignored her. Then he looked back at his phone, typed something, waited, looked up again. My phone, face down on the counter beside me, began to vibrate. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to. I already knew.
So,
On screen, Ethan's posture changed again. He wasn't explaining anymore. He was unraveling. He moved closer to Claire. She stepped back. He reached for her wrist. Not violently. Desperately. She pulled away. That was when people started watching. Not glancing. Watching. The group around them widened in that subtle way crowds do when discomfort enters the air. A man I recognized from one of our engagement dinners said something to Ethan, low and brief. Probably trying to calm him down. Probably too late. Ethan shook his head hard. Then he did something that made even the DJ glance over. He raised his voice. Miss. I still couldn't hear every word over the music. But some moments don't need sound. I saw his mouth form my name, then Claire's. Then the shape of one sentence, sharp and disbelieving. You knew? Not directed at me. Directed at her. So that was it. Not just the email. Not just the public pause. The story had split in real time. Whatever he had told me, and whatever he had told Claire, were no longer holding together. And once that kind of fracture happens in public, there's no graceful way to contain it. Claire said something short, cold, then turned half away. Ethan stepped in front of her. She tried to move around him. He kept talking. Too fast now. Too emotional. Too visible. One of the women from the group touched Ethan's shoulder. He pulled away. Another man stepped between him and Claire for a second, not aggressively, just enough to create space. Heads were turning all across the rooftop now. Even people who clearly didn't know them had started following the scene. The live chat on the stream was moving. Fast. What happened? Who's fighting? This is insane. Then Ethan did the worst possible thing. He started crying. Not quiet tears. Not the kind you can turn away from and hide behind a bathroom door. A full public collapse. His face folded in on itself, one hand over his mouth, the other gripping his phone. He looked stunned by his own humiliation, like it had arrived too quickly for him to prepare a version of himself that could survive it. Claire's reaction was immediate. She looked around first. That small panicked scan people do when they realize strangers are now part of the moment. Then she said something to him. Firm. Final. And whatever it was, it broke the last piece of him that was still pretending he could manage this. He grabbed her arm again. This time she jerked free. Hard. One of the women moved between them. Someone else called his name. Another person from the group turned away entirely, already done with the night. And then Ethan pointed at his phone, pointed toward the table, toward the group, toward nothing coherent at all. Accusation had replaced explanation. Control was gone. I picked up my phone for the first time. 9 missed calls. 4 texts. The newest one read, "How could you do this to me?" Then, "You blindsided me in front of everyone." Then, "Call me right now." I looked back at the screen. Watched him pacing now, jaw tight, trying to speak to Claire while she refused to look at him. And that was the moment everything became simple. Not easy. Simple. He had wanted space. He had wanted ambiguity. He had wanted a version of freedom that left me waiting politely at the edge of it. What he didn't want, what he had clearly never imagined, was consequence. Public, immediate, irreversible consequence. On screen, he said my name again. Then he looked at his phone. Probably calling. Probably realizing the calls weren't going through. He tried again. Then checked the screen. Confusion. Then anger. Then that awful expression people get when they understand they've just lost access. Not to a person. To control. I blocked his number. Then Instagram. Then WhatsApp. Then I set his emails to archive automatically. One action after another. No hesitation. No dramatic speech. Just clean exits. The moment I finished, the vibration stopped. Instantly. The silence in my kitchen came back so fast it almost felt artificial. On the live stream, Ethan looked down at his phone again. Again. Then around him. As if one of the people standing there might somehow fix what was happening. No one did. Claire said something else. This time I could almost read it. I didn't sign up for this. Then she turned and walked away. Not running. Not emotional. Just done. 2 of the women followed her. Ethan stood there for half a second like his body hadn't accepted she was actually leaving. Then he followed. One of the men caught his shoulder, held him back. They exchanged words. Short, heated, final. And then Ethan shook him off and kept going. That was enough. I closed the laptop. Not because I felt overwhelmed. Because I had seen what I needed to see. The collapse had already happened. The rest was debris. 30 seconds later, my phone lit up again. This time it was Daniel. I answered the text, not the call. His message was short. "You ended it, didn't you?" I looked at it for a moment, then typed one word. "Yes." He replied almost immediately. He told Claire you two were basically over. She didn't know about the email list. She definitely didn't know you were still talking about deposits and wedding plans last week. That detail landed quietly. Of course she didn't. Because Ethan hadn't wanted truth. He'd wanted flexibility. Different versions for different people. Just enough honesty to feel justified. Just enough omission to keep every door open. Daniel sent another message. "It got ugly after you blocked him. He tried calling you in front of everyone. When it wouldn't go through, he accused Claire of encouraging you. That made 0 sense and everybody knew it." I exhaled slowly. Looked out into the dark kitchen window. Saw only my reflection. Calm, still, familiar. Another text from Daniel. "Claire told him she thought he was basically single. He said you were on a break. She said that's not the same thing as over." Then he started yelling. There it was, the center of it. Not cheating exactly. Not in the narrow technical sense he would probably cling to later. Something harder to defend. Something uglier. He had tried to create moral fog. A space where he could act available without calling himself disloyal. A space where I was still there if things went wrong. A space where everyone else was supposed to accept confusion as innocence. But confusion wasn't what I had seen. I had seen planning. I had seen timing. I had seen him ask for distance only when distance benefited him. Daniel's final message came a minute later. "Trips wrecked. 2 couples already left the rooftop. No one knows what to say to him." I didn't answer, because there was nothing useful left to say. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. Not from anxiety, from stillness. The kind that comes after a decision has fully settled. I made coffee. Opened the joint account. Transferred my portion of next month's mortgage early. In the memo line, I wrote, "Final contribution pending property discussion." Clear, documented, unemotional. Then I emailed a real estate attorney. Asked about initiating either a buyout or a sale. No long explanation, just facts. Joint ownership. Broken engagement. Need clean process. By noon, my sister texted me a screenshot. Ethan had messaged her. Long paragraph. Too many words. He said I had humiliated him. That I had destroyed us over optics. That nothing physical had happened. That I was being cold. My sister asked, "Do you want me to respond?" I typed back, "No." Then, after a pause, "Don't engage with him at all." She sent one final reply. For what it's worth, he doesn't sound heartbroken. He sounds panicked. I looked at that for a long moment, then locked my phone. Because she was right, and that difference mattered. By the 3rd day after the rooftop meltdown, Ethan cut the trip short and flew back to San Diego. I found out not because he told me, because I had already expected he would. And by then, I was already gone. The morning after the rooftop incident, I packed a single suitcase. Not everything, just what mattered. Documents, passport, laptop backups, a few personal things I didn't want left behind if the situation escalated. I didn't empty the condo. I didn't change the locks. Both of our names were still on the mortgage. This wasn't about drama. It was about control. Through work, I had access to a short-term furnished rental near Mission Valley. One of our project managers owned it. Between tenants. Clean. Temporary. I paid 2 weeks up front. No questions. No complications. By the time Ethan's plane landed back in San Diego, I was already gone. He tried calling. Blocked. Then again, blocked. Then an email. Subject line, urgent. I didn't block that one. Not yet. I read it once. He said I had overreacted. That I had embarrassed him in front of his friends. In front of Claire. That I had created a narrative that made him look unstable. He said nothing physical had happened. That I had destroyed our engagement over optics. Then, finally, something practical. He said the condo was his home too. That I couldn't just disappear and start making decisions without him. See, that part was fair. So I responded. Short. Precise. Bye. The engagement is over. The email reflected the reality of a break you initiated. I'm open to discussing buyout or sale through attorneys. Let's keep communication in writing. No emotion. No accusations. Just structure. He replied within minutes. This is insane. We can fix this. Fix. That word. He hadn't used it once, when he was asking for the break. I didn't engage with it. I repeated the only thing that mattered. Please coordinate through legal channels regarding the property. I will cover my share of expenses through the end of the month. He didn't respond after that, not directly. But the noise found other ways. My sister sent another screenshot. Ethan had posted a vague story. Something about betrayal, impulsive decisions, consequences. The comments were mixed. Some people supporting him, others asking questions he didn't answer. Yes. For the first time since this started, I felt something settle completely. Not satisfaction, not relief, alignment. He had wanted flexibility, a situation he could adjust depending on how he felt in the moment. A version of our relationship that could stretch just far enough to include someone else, without losing me entirely. But relationships don't work like that. Not stable ones, not ones that last. 2 weeks later, everything was procedural. We met once, at the real estate attorney's office downtown. Conference room, neutral space, no history in the walls. He looked different. Not devastated, not broken, just tired, like someone who had spent too long trying to explain something that no longer made sense, even to himself. We didn't hug, didn't hesitate, just sat across from each other while the attorney laid out options. Buyout, sale, timeline. Ethan spoke first. I didn't think you'd end it like that, he said. Not angry, just flat. I thought the break would give us space. I met his eyes. You asked for space when your ex entered the picture. That's not neutral. He shook his head. Nothing happened, Natalie. Dancing isn't cheating. Those comments were misinterpreted. I didn't argue the details, because they didn't matter anymore. This isn't about whether you crossed a line, I said. It's about the fact that you created a situation where crossing one was acceptable. He didn't respond immediately, because there wasn't a response to that. After a moment, he tried again. We could have worked through this. I nodded slightly. Before the break? Or after you tested something else first? I didn't say the second part out loud. I didn't need to. The silence answered it for both of us. We agreed to list the condo. Market was strong. We'd both walk away clean after fees. Split everything evenly. No disputes. No drama. That meeting lasted less than an hour. When we stood up to leave, he hesitated for half a second, like he wanted to say something else, something that might shift the outcome. He didn't. Neither did I. After that, I blocked his email, not out of anger, out of finality. The condo sold within 5 weeks. We signed closing documents separately. No joint meetings. No conversations. Just signatures. The last update I got about Ethan came through a mutual friend. He and Claire didn't last past the summer. Apparently, she wasn't interested in being part of something that unstable. That detail didn't feel like justice or revenge. Just predictable. I'm not proud of how public everything became, but I don't regret it. Because the truth is, when someone asks for a break at the exact moment an ex reappears, that's not confusion. That's a test. And he wasn't testing whether our relationship would survive. He was testing whether he could step outside of it and still have me waiting when he came back. He found his answer. And the version of me he expected to still be there was already gone, before he even got on the plane.